Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be looking about how to heal Operation Floodgate. This is going to be my healer's guide to this dungeon. It's not 100% for healers. There's going to be overlapping information about mechanics and all those things, but this is based on my experiences because I've done this dungeon so many times. This is video footage of my last run. This is very recent because they did change this dungeon. They did nerf a couple of things. They made it easier. They made a couple of things a little bit harder. This dungeon, Operation Floodgate, think of it as something like Dawnbreaker from Season 1. I don't think this is the most mechanically intensive dungeon out there, but your healer is gonna have to work. So this is very healing intensive, or at least it used to be extremely healing intensive. It still is. We're gonna start off with some of the mechanics. We're gonna look at mob mechanics, we're gonna look at the boss mechanics, we're gonna look a little bit at routing. So when you start off the dungeon, there's actually a really nice way where you can go through here to go to the first big trash bag pull. There is or used to be routes where you go straight to the boss, but Blizzard basically fun detected. They kind of changed that because they added mobs in the pathing. So you can actually go through this way to go to the big trash pack mob pull that a lot of people do. This is going to be a big pull. There's going to be shreddernators in here. So you see these boys here. I just want to talk about the mechanic here. They're going to be casting an ability. And if you have weak auras, again, I definitely recommend having weak auras. It tells me here that I'm going to have to move in 3 seconds. You have to pre-move. So basically, I'm setting up on my ramp and all those things, but there is going to be blades spawning underneath your feet. Make sure you're pre-moving. If you're standing still for a couple of seconds, you're going to die, so you need to pre-move. Usually, if everyone knows this mechanic, there isn't going to be any deaths here. But this is the start of the season. People might not be aware of this. So as a healer, I like to try and set up. I like to, again, maybe if you're a druid, put some hots out. If you're priest, get some shields out there and things like that, just in case people don't pre-move. These shredderners have a frontal, they have this flamethrower. Again, this pull of shredderners in terms of melee, absolute nightmare. There's also a fixate there that you need to run around. This first pull is going to be pretty dangerous. And then there's another really important cast that is a channel cast that can be interrupted, that can be stopped. And it's going to be a surveyor beam. Now, you are expecting people to interrupt, again, to provide stuns and all those things, but if it doesn't happen, you'll see it here. So it's going to be targeting the Shadow Priest right here. So in my grid 2, my cell profile, there's going to be big, you can see here, there's an ant trail, it changes the color. It's indicating that this beam, this person has this beam, there's a lot of damage happening to them. If this mob does not get interrupted, does not get stunned, does not get stopped or whatever, this person most likely will die unless they get focused on healing. You can see the amount of damage is happening. They're also dropping puddles. So technically, if you have a really organized group, this will never go off. But in pug situations, it can definitely happen. So make sure that you're tracking this. Make sure that you know which person has this. And in a lot of the cases, you might have to sacrifice a defensive to use on them. So the Shadow Priest survived here. And basically, that's the whole part of the first pull. Shreddernators, make sure you avoid it. Make sure you pre-move. Again, you can see the feet thing again here. I need to pre-move. I didn't really do it, but I didn't take too much damage. And then make sure that you're tracking Surveyor Beam. And now let's talk about the first boss, Big Mama. Now, this boss has been changed quite a bit in terms of the healing requirement that is needed. This is a DPS check boss. Keep that in mind. There's multiple phases to this. Phase 1, this is what I call the phase 1 of this fight. There isn't a whole lot of healing happening. You have ads. You need to kill those ads. Phase 2 is going to be, or intermission is going to be an AoE happening, and then the boss is going to keep repeating itself. Now, during phase 1, you have these ads, and these ads are going to be, there is going to be a cast happening in terms of maximum distortion, and that needs to be interrupted if you're a healer with an interrupt. There isn't a whole lot of things happening outside of that. There is going to be another, you can see mechanic here in terms of Sonic Boom. A person is going to be selected. You can see it on my grid 2 frames right now, or they're going to be selected very soon. So you can see the paladin got selected by this. Now, if you're a range, it's very easy to avoid this without losing any damage because you can just stay max range. And then you can avoid this quite easily. If you're a melee, it's probably going to be a little bit more awkward. But if you get pushed back like that, and there is a chance that you might get combo, depending on the cast of the ads and things like that, depending on, again, you have these swirlies, but Sonic Boom is not that bad. So there isn't a whole lot of things happening right now. You have to kill the ads. If you don't kill the ads, and there is a timer and things like that, if you don't kill the ads, the boss is going to get a barrier. And that barrier is going to pulse damage, and there's going to be AoE. You'll see it right now. We're killing the ads. I got Sonic Boom just to show you how you can move this. You can go max range. You can use some, again, movement speed and things like that. It's not too bad. Now, we killed the ads instantly, or the ads were killed before the barrier happened, which is great. This is what you want in a perfect situation. So if you kill the ads, the boss is going to go into this stage. There's going to be AoE damage happening. The boss takes increased damage as well. Again, you can try and get your cooldowns. You should try and have cooldowns for this, honestly, especially in hierarchies. This is going to get way more dangerous. So basically, this is the whole boss. You get phase 1, you have to kill the ads, and then you get phase 2, or what I call intermission, where you have to do AoE healing. So what happens if you don't kill the ads? So this is one of my other runs with my rest of druid. My cat came in to say hello. Say hello. So if you don't kill the ads in time, you'll see the boss getting barrier. And when the boss gets the barrier, you can see it right here. There's going to be pulsing AoE damage, and there's still going to be mechanics happening. You can see we still have 2 ads alive. There's AoE damage happening, and there's still mechanics. For example, I get selected by Sonic Boom right now. So there's still 1 ad alive. The shield is here. The boss is doing pulsing AoE, and then there's also mechanics that I need to do. So this can get overwhelming very, very easily. And once the ad dies, the boss is going into intermission phase where there's AoE damage. So technically, if you don't have enough focus on the ads, or if you don't have enough DPS, you can go through insanely annoying phases of AoE damage. Early in the PTR, if you didn't kill the ads in time, it was a softened rage. You couldn't really carry it. You would have to sacrifice a bunch of your cooldowns. They have nerfed that quite a bit. So I'm not sure how hard it is, or again, it's going to depend on the key, but the general consensus, focus on the ads so the healer can save some cooldowns, so the healer doesn't have to stress. And then right after this boss, there's going to be another pull that you have to do, because you have to click on these crates right here, and there's going to be Dark Fuse Blood Warpers that are going to cast Warp Blood. And honestly, the best advice I can give you, if you're a resto druid, if you're someone that needs pre-hotting, before this pull happens, again, I wasn't fully aware how the size of the pull is going to be. Make sure you're pre-hotting, make sure you're ready, try and get some cooldowns for this if you can, because these mobs are going to keep you at night because of how annoying they are. They're going to cast Warp Blood that's going to apply and absorb, and also is going to deal damage. And you can see it right now. This mob is the priority. If your DPS is not focusing on this, they are trolling hardcore, because this is going to make your life so much harder. So they are going to be casting an absorb. It's like an AoE damage. It's going to be an absorb applied, and there's also going to be damage happening. Now, I get hardcore carried by the Shadow Priest Vampiric Embrace here. So this felt like there was actually nothing happening. You can see here the meters. The Shadow Priest healing is insane here. So if you have someone that can help you with healing this, it's going to be extremely nice, because these mobs are going to be really, really annoying. Prep for damage. There's going to be another pull that you need to do. Let's go and look at that. Once you kill those mobs, there's going to be the same kind of pull upstairs, and this pull is even worse, because there's going to be another mobs that put swirlies on the ground. So this is the general theme of the whole thing. AoE healing when you have to move. So prep for this. Again, you have the same kind of Warp Blood happening. It's going to happen very soon. You can see here I have the weak core that tells me there's AoE incoming. I didn't really prep because I have to move. I wasn't fully prepared for this. You can see here I also added Trail to show the people that have absorbs on them. I'm going with my ramp. I'm preparing for this. You see the amount of AoE healing that's needed here. It's really, really annoying. I'm doing like close to 4 million HPS here. And on top of that, there's also going to be swirls on the ground happening again. There's going to be another cast, because the mob is not going to die in time. The swirlies happen at the exact same time that the AoE. This is what I'm talking about. Preparing your healing and accounting for the fact that you have to move. There's a lot of this in Operation Floodgate. So the AoE is happening. You can see here I had to move. I didn't get to prep all that as much as I wanted to, but just be aware. Warp Blood, absolutely insane. Dark Fuse Blood Warpers, absolutely crazy mobs. The healing checks can be insane depending on how high of a key you're doing. The general consensus, if you're ranged, always try to stay close to these bombs right here, because you're going to get a magic debuff, or there is a chance of getting a magic debuff. You don't want to spend time moving to these bombs. You want to be able to be dispelled instantly, because this magic debuff in higher keys is going to hurt. So right now, I'm trying to position myself here. I'm going to get the magic debuff straight away. You can see it right now. I moved these 3 bombs and dispel myself. I didn't get this bomb for whatever reason, but that's the basic consensus. If you're ranged, you should always be able to do that. If you're melee, depending on the boss positioning and things like that, it can be a little bit awkward. On top of that, so I get a magic debuff, I dispel myself. If someone else gets magic debuff, you need to make sure to track their location. You need to make sure they run to the bomb and they get dispelled. So then I also have the bait. So now I got the bait. You can destroy these bombs with the bait. So I make sure I position myself between the bombs. I think I'm going to get 2 here. So I moved last second, and there was another bomb here that I got rid of as well. So that's the basic consensus of the whole thing. That's basically the whole fight in terms of optimizing it. There is going to be phases where if you don't kill the bombs, or if you don't manage to kill the bombs, because again, you can kill the bombs by baiting into them or using the magic dispel. If you mess up and the bomb explodes, there is going to be AoE damage. I think that actually happened a little bit further here. So the whole fight is actually relatively boring to some extent. Again, I shouldn't say boring, but once you get the mechanics down, it's not that bad. But we did miss a bomb at one point. I think you can see it here. There's a bomb available. The bomb is about to explode. We don't have a magic debuff because we messed up. We didn't bait it properly. The bomb explodes. I am going to use my barrier just in case. I don't think it's that bad with one stack, but you can see here my grid 2 also changes color to indicate that there's AoE, that's a dot. And you need to just make sure to heal through that. Oh, and I almost forgot, when you dispel the person that has the magic debuff, they're going to be knocked up in the air. And there is a lot of things happening in this fight that you need to be situationally aware. I talked about this already. The Warlock is going to get it, they're going to go to the bombs, they're going to dispel them, they're going to be knocked up in the air. There is a possibility of a combo. There is a mechanic, or if you have the targeted weak wars, you can get selected by a quick shot. It's going to deal a little bit of damage. And there is a possibility when you have the magic debuff that you can get comboed depending on which class you're playing, depending if you're using defensive. So just making sure that you have these people covered that have the debuff, because if they have to run quite a bit, again, I'm going to be taking damage from the quick shot. If you have the targeted weak wars, it can show you. If that was the Warlock instead, again, I might have to use a defensive. I might have to pre-hot if I'm like a Resto Druid. Again, depending on the healer you're playing, take care of the people that have the magic debuff, because they can get comboed. And right after killing this boss, a lot of the pugs or a lot of groups out there will want to do this pull with these disturbed kells. And this pull is going to be extremely intensive, and it can get out of hand very, very easily, because these mobs need to be interrupted and they need to be stopped. You can see this jettison kelp. This needs to be stopped depending on how many people or mobs are casting it. It's kind of like a random AoE damage that can happen, and honestly, people can get really... You'll see right now, definitely using defensives, definitely using cooldowns is very important. You can see this also needs to be interrupted here. So interrupts, stops. If someone dies and then you don't have the DPS to kill them, it's going to become extremely, extremely annoying. Don't be afraid to pop your cooldowns, pop your defensives. Make sure this trash bag dies, because honestly, this can be really, really annoying. You can see here the amount of damage that's happening. Again, if you have good micromanagement of stops and, again, all of those things, it's going to be a lot easier. But I've wiped this pull quite a bit. Again, I've done this dungeon a lot, so just keep in mind, because right after this, there's going to be another really, really hard boss. Again, I say hard boss. Mechanically, this is not all that difficult. But in terms of the AoE or the raw type of healing that you need to provide, I think in really high keys, this has potential of being one of the hardest bosses to heal. So there's a raw type of damage throughout the whole fight. You get linked with a person. The general consensus in most pug groups that I've done is that you're going to go left. I don't know what's going to be the most popular tactic in live servers, but right now, if you get linked, when you get linked with a person and there's going to be a frontal that's going to be happening, you go left. Basically, an example of this, we didn't really talk about which direction to go and basically caused a little bit of confusion. There's going to be a dodge mechanic happening. You're linked with players. So that means if you have players going in different directions, you're going to be pulled together. And you can see here, two of the people went the opposite directions. They got pulled together and they got hit by the frontal. This will happen, especially in pug situations. Just make sure you dedicate the positioning beforehand. And then after that, you're going to get wave kind of explosions happening here. And this is honestly going to be the hardest part of the fight, where I try to save defensives. The defensives, cooldowns, and things like that. This is going to happen over and over again. And these waves, and you can see right now, there's going to be an explosion. They're not all that visible. So there's still raw type of damage happening. You can see the Shadow Priest is getting hit by the waves, which can happen very easily. The damage of these waves has also been increased. In my previous PTO testing, honestly, getting hit by wave wasn't all that bad. You could actually survive this quite easily. But now, honestly, it feels very, very dangerous. Shadow Priest is getting hit by multiple of these, or it's getting ridden by it. And then on top of that, there's AoE damage or raw type of damage happening. And you can die very, very easily. Saving your defensive, saving your cooldowns. I think this is the time to do it, and this is going to happen over and over and over and over again. Generally, in a lot of these fights, depending on which tank you have, again, we have a Blood DK here who can handle themselves. I don't try to heal the tank here. They should be fine. You try to focus everyone else here, and again, you can see the wave explosion happening again. This is going to happen over and over again. Just to showcase, I'm going to take one tick of this wave explosion right here, and you can see here, it deals a decent amount of damage. So definitely movement is really important. You're still linked to the people. So make sure you don't run away too far. Make sure you don't panic. This is going to be an absolute nightmare in Pugs. And then right after this boss, you're gonna meet my favorite mob in this dungeon, and it's Bubbles. If you're a Trailer Park Boys enjoyer, you actually think this is kind of fun. But you can see here, these mobs are going to disappear, and you're going to get this Bubbles mob. This mob is absolutely atrocious. And even though it's been changed quite a bit, it's actually been nerfed in terms of the data it provides. It's still really, really annoying. So first of all, it's going to spawn these bubbles on the ground. You don't want to touch them, or you're going to get one shot in most cases, and then it's going to do a frontal. So this is the kind of thing that you need to remember. Bubble spawn, frontal, big AoE damage. So there's going to be a big AoE damage right now. I kind of messed up because I wasn't sure how hard this AoE is going to hit after it got nerfed. So I was using my pet on all those things like right now, which honestly, you would save your cooldowns for this phase, because right after it does the frontal, there's going to be a dot happening. You can see here backwash. Backwash is being cast, and the dot is going to appear on your players, and the amount of damage that's happening is absolutely wild. And right here, this is probably the biggest mistake that a healer can make. I literally tunnel vision the frames right now, and I don't notice there's a bubble right underneath me. Literally tunnel visioned, did not pay attention to this, and just died. And if you die, coming back from this is actually really annoying, because when you release your body, the AoE is still happening, and it's almost basically a wipe. So keep that in mind. The basic consensus of this: bubble spawn, frontal, and then big AoE happening. And make sure you have something or some cooldowns available for it, because it is very annoying. There were ways to skip this before by going on the water and things like that, but Blizzard has changed a lot of this. I'm not sure if there's going to be any secret tech to this, but when facing bubbles, just be prepared, okay? And now let's talk about the last two trash bags, because they're they're going to be healing intensive. So this trash bag is going to have a jump starter. There's also going to be interrupts that you need to handle, and there's also going to be a magic dispel that you need to handle. And on top of that, if that wasn't enough, there is swirlies. Do not play reckless with these swirlies. Once you see these swirlies, run away as fast as possible. They happen quite quick. Do not greed. I can tell you right now, I died to these multiple times. You can see here there's a magic dispel. Focus on this. There's AoE damage happening from the jump starter. There's a interrupt that you need to handle. Pretty annoying pull. Again, a lot of healing on the move, but it's very, very manageable. And then the second or the last, again, a person died here because of these pulls. You can see here, the pull is happening right now. And if you greed a little bit, a tiny bit, it's over. That's how fast it happens. I died to these multiple times. And then the last trash bag of the dungeon is going to be double jump starters. People hate this trash bag because there's a lot of AoE healing needed, and then there's a lot of movement. This seems to be the whole theme of the whole dungeons, or a lot of dungeons out there, especially Operation Floodgate. Big AoE healing checks. On top of that, you have to move as well. Again, do not greed the blue swirlies. I think this is very predictable AoE damage. I think this is going to be extremely annoying on really high keys. And the key that I'm doing right here, I think it's very manageable. I think Resto Druid is absolutely insane at handling this. And I think it's partly why Resto Druid is so strong. I kind of almost forgot, because once you kill those two double jump starters, you kind of want to have a healing cooldown or something available for the start of this boss, because this is the last boss, and it's going to have the first phase is going to be the dance phase. There's going to be AoE damage happening here. You might have to move depending on these lines. Again, having a cooldown here is going to be really nice and something to really think about, because you're probably going to burn a lot of cooldowns because of those two double jump starters in terms of the last trash pack that you just did. The boss mechanics here are very, very simple. You're going to be selected by these sparks, and you need to go over the pools that are not electrified. If a spark goes into a pool, it becomes electrified. Very, very simple. In terms of healing, you're going to have, during this stage, so after the AoE happened, you're going to have two people selected with a debuff. That debuff is pretty nasty, and you're going to have, this is going to happen twice before the AoE begins again. So this is what I mean. There's going to be a zap happening in a couple of seconds. Two members are going to be selected. Me, so this is a private aura, so you can see here, me and the Shadow Priest got selected. I try to apply shields. I have pain suppression if shit hits the fan and things like that, if I can't heal up. So after I heal up the dots, there's also going to be the mechanic with the spark. It's very, very easy. You just have to bait it into the pools that are not electrified. Once the spark hits the pool, it's going to make that pool electrified and things like that. A lot easier if you're ranged than melee, in my opinion. There's also going to be a tank hit that's happening right now in terms of Thunder Punch. Again, you can track it. You can try and help out your tank. And this is going to be the second set of zaps. You can see right now two people. A Red Paladin and the Warlock got selected by it. The Red Paladin is using Bubble, which is honestly if you're gonna use defensives, I would use it for the second set of zaps, because if you can't heal up these people, there's going to be the intermission phase starting in terms of the AoE damage. So you could technically, again, this dot has been nerfed. It used to be like 8 seconds. And the longer that the fight continued, you would actually get moments where the zap debuff would overlap with the AoE. And that would be absolutely criminal. You would have to use defensives on those. They did reduce the zap dot to, I think, like 6 seconds now, so it's a lot easier. So depending on how long the fight continues, I would still look at using defensives for the second set of zaps to happen, because you can still kind of get this overlap if you don't heal up the person in time or whatever. But this is the whole fight. I don't think it's overly difficult, but it kind of looks at your AoE healing, and it also looks at your single target healing. Make sure you track the debuffs, because it's very, very important in terms of the zap, because you need to focus on those people. Oh, and also, if you get a debuff, you have this circle, make sure not to stand close to these water or pools, because that's going to electrify them, turn them into shock water. That means you can't bait the spark through them, and if you go through this, you're gonna get stunned. So therefore, you have less room to maneuver. Just something to keep in mind. And guys, let me know how you feel about this video. If you have any tips specifically for this dungeon, please leave them in the comments below. We're gonna learn together, we're gonna get better and conquer this dungeon. Again, enjoy season 2, and I'll see you in my next guide.